Hi everyone. So I didn't really know what to present here because maybe I was just going to get a survey. Like, who of you identify as researchers or engineers? So researchers, okay, and then engineers. Okay, majority, right? Okay, so I'm going to be primarily targeting engineers, so I don't know if you're a researcher, if you care about this, but just come along for the ride. I did this talk at the OpenAI Dev Day in Singapore, and I just wanted to give people, like, here's the starting point for where AI engineering is in 2024, based on everything that we've been doing in the Latent Space pod and the stuff that I do. And then I end with a fun demo because people like demos. I'll just shove it along, and I think I'll try to go quick first, and then we can go back on the slides. All the slides here, you don't have to take a lot of photos. It's already on my website, so swyx.io. You just go there and you'll see it. Julian or Sam. I always call you Julian because you got two first names. Sam already introduced the AI engineer, so I'm going to skip all that. And then Alan already introduced the podcast, so I'm going to skip that. I also run an AI newsletter that I need to write after we get done here today. That is 99% AI generated, that covers all AI Discords, Reddits, and Twitter, so you can keep up to date without always being on your phone. Okay, so I think the current sort of meta is, like, a lot of people discussing what makes an agent, and this is what I was invited to OpenAI to speak about. So this is where I started with. The typical definitions, I always start from Shawn Wang, which is agent equals LLM plus memory plus planning skills plus tool use. That definition was over a year ago. I never liked it because of one thing that she's missing, is that she didn't have an orchestrator. She didn't have a while loop. In the sort of dev tools parlance, where these things all pan out, is that you have all these sort of tooling that augments or productionize each of these things that she's talking about. So basically, what this talk is basically just kind of going through into the state of the art right now as to what each of these things are. If you're paying attention to the field, none of this will be new. If you're not up to speed, then you might discover some new names that you want to look into. First, I want to highlight at a high level one of the biggest sort of evolution in my thinking on agents. In 2023, I wrote this post on the anatomy of autonomy, and I think a lot of people tend to have this very anthropocentric view of AI development. I call it anthropocentric, meaning, like, you compare everything to a human. You define AGI as when models can do things better or smarter than humans. I think this is a very flawed view because the development of AI is very jagged. Like, the calculators are superhuman in one aspect, one element, and subhuman in others. And you should expect this for AI anyway. So always trying to be anthropocentric, like comparing to human development, is always flawed. Is just generally very, very flawed. I think the prevailing wisdom today is this thing from Andre, that kind of reframes LLMs as just building blocks. It's a new type of compute that we can harness by adding all these tools to it. So that makes it a lot more tractable to us as software engineers because we know how to build systems. We just have a different new nuclear reactor in the middle of it that we have to harness differently. So what AI engineering really is just putting all those things into the rest of our systems. More recently, I've been really trying to get my hand around the sort of ops landscape. There's a lot of gateways and ops and evals and prompt management and RAG platforms, and I always want a single organizing worldview that, like, sort of coherently puts everything together and predicts what each of the individual players that I see will do and move towards. Like, where everyone starts in. This is part of my general theory of developer tooling. Like, every market has an impossible triangle where individually they all make sense, but together they're complete madness. So individually, each of these things are interesting platforms, but then they start invading each other's territories because they have to, because they're in the same market. So this is the LLM infra market. And you can start seeing where there are a lot of players in the ops space, there are a lot of players in the API space, and a lot of players in the framework space, and they start intruding on each other's tools. Here's a quick list of what each of these, where I sort of mentally classify each of these lists. You may agree, disagree, but I just would recommend at least a passing knowledge of most of these names because they've at least passed my bar of notability. The first names on each of these lists are the ones that we actually use for small talk and AI news. The second part of the sort of agent stack would be memory and knowledge. I think ChatGPT still doesn't get enough credit for actually being the first lab to ship memory. This is in February of this year, which to us feels super old, but I mean it's still less than a year old, and it's still really underrated. Maybe not the most perfect thing, right? Like, but at least they shipped it. We get a sense of like how it's supposed to enhance our conversation with an AI over time. The sort of evolved Pokemon version of memory is knowledge. So Sam already talked to you about graph, RAG, and vector databases. I don't think I need to elaborate on this more. There are plenty of vendors who are more than happy to tell you about what RAG is. The major players here I would classify as these guys. I would say that this is not enough. These are all very, very super early stage. Like LangGraph is barely even a startup. Like it's kind of like the second evolution of LangChain. So there's a lot more to develop here, and I'm relatively positive on the concept of memory databases as distinct units from vector databases. If you're interested in the startup landscape, I can talk more about it. The third section of the AI agent stack would be the planning and the multi-agent stack. This is the I would say even more immature than memory and knowledge. So this one, I gave this talk at an OpenAI event, so obviously I referenced the two OpenAI projects, which are, you have to read the Let's Verify step-by-step paper, and you should try out Swarm, even though when you try out Swarm, you realize that it's buggy and it's not actually an actual framework. But it gives you an idea of where they see planning agents and multi-agents going, or at least the first one is process reward models, but that's where they see sort of agent critiquing other agents field going, and then Swarm shows you how they see multi-agent orchestration, like agents handing off to other agents. So the field here is super light because it's so new. I think since here we have a few more sort of planning or reasoning type models in here, but I wouldn't really classify them as planning. They're just sort of more extended reasoning. Then finally, I also put in here, so I think the last part of the stack is tools. Like actually a lot of people simplify agents being LLMs plus tools. We just went through the other sort of three elements that they're missing. I think it's very poetic for people who don't know, aren't familiar with the history of LangChain, that the big three tools that everyone has is what LangChain launched with. And I think it's very interesting and symbolic that basically you just have this convergent evolution that everyone has the same needs. So obviously you're going to start seeing these recurring patterns again and again, and you might as well just have a preferred tool of choice. So the first is code interpreter, second is browser control, third is a sort of React loop, and that's an orchestrator. So the modern versions of all these, one year on, is E2B, browser based, and all the agent frameworks, too many to name. We already covered them in the previous thing. So again, all these companies and all these impossible triangles, they all start in a certain niche of their market, and then they start to expand and intrude on each other's territory. There are also more sort of comprehensive frameworks. I would highlight as more recently Magentic 1, which is sort of the second iteration of AutoGen from Microsoft because the AutoGen team left. And then Devin, who gave a really good talk about their architecture at the conference that I ran in June, and just went GA today for $500 a month. Actually, I think quite a good deal if you can prompt it well. So I think there's definitely a skill issue with Devin. I've been trying it for 8 months, and I would say I'm not a daily user. This is my sort of brain dump slide. I always have a brain dump slide because I always want to give people homework. I think the meta game about building agents is always keeping an idea of what is mature tech and then what is frontier. And every time there's an evolution or advance in the frontier, being able to be first or have the best setup to integrate that new capability into your products. So what is mature is general knowledge, long context, RAG, batch audio transcription, and code generation. What's emerging is tool use, vision, PDF parsing, real time, text and image. And then what's frontier is all these guys. So like I think if you have a mental model of like the stages of development of like what models can do and where to productionize these things inside of your products, then you'll be a better engineer for it. And this is how I did it as of November 2024. So don't hold me to it long term, but this is the starting point if you want to start with something. Okay. I always try to end with a demo of how I put things together, and I'm very inspired by the way that Tony Stark works. So you see Tony Stark building on the Iron Man suit. He sort of has a direct manipulation of his model. Like he is working on the model, he's sort of testing it out. He's talking with I think it's Friday. I forget the name of his AI. So I always liked that idea, and so I kind of replicated it with this app, Bolt. So if you don't know, Bolt is one of the apps that I think Sam was talking about, where it's kind of like prompt to app. And so here I'm going to ask you to make a Space Invaders game, and it's it's really cool if you're not up to speed. That the tech is there now that you can make a Space Invaders game, or make a Spotify clone, or make an Airbnb clone, and you can pretty much get that in a single shot, which is insane. And this is 4.0 because I was presenting an OpenAI. Claude's actually better, but don't tell OpenAI that. Okay, so does this render? Oh my god, sometimes it doesn't. Run it. God. So Bolt actually runs a web container inside of the browser. So it actually has a WebAssembly environment. Okay, let's see how complete this thing is. All right. Cool. It actually does. This is zero-shot game generation, which is kind of cool. But I think that's not what I was trying to demonstrate. So I think this is a coding agent. It's done pretty well. I think for me, the frontier capability that came out in the last 2 months, I think it was launched October 1st, was voice. So I added voice to Bolt. Bolt is open source, so anyone can do this. And I wanted to show what that looks like. Hey, I have this Space Invaders game, but it's not really great. Like the enemies should span the entire screen. So could you make sure that they span the entire screen, please?
All right, I've initiated the process to make those alien invaders spread out across the whole screen, giving you a more intense cosmic battle. Because nothing says fun like being overwhelmed by a wall of enemies, right?
It looks like, okay, for some reason I have the old version of my code where it's still code freeze. I mean, the screen still freezes whenever I run it. Oh, now I don't have enemies. It's crazy. Hey, so your update actually introduced more bugs. It reduced, I can't see any enemies on the screen. Can you bring them back or just rewrite the enemies, please?
I've set up a new request to bring those enemies back to life and give you a fighting chance.
What we have here is an agent controlling another agent. So I have the voice agent that I speak with that is controlling the coding agent that's working asynchronously. This demo that I have loaded, for some reason, isn't the one that I demoed. Isn't the one that I showed. I don't know why. Getting a whole bunch of errors. But I like ideally that you get the UX that you're just kind of working on the app and QAing the app, and you're talking out loud what the issues are, and it just fixes itself. And sometimes I have the ability to do that. Okay, so maybe I'll do like make a landing page for Infer, the Vancouver AI engineering meetup. I don't know. Let's see what to do that. So I think like anything where I'm not like recompiling a server and running it, I think that would be easier for these things to do. For me to show you what I'm trying to demonstrate. All right, so here goes again.
Hi, let's begin.
All right, so I have a landing page here that's pretty nice, but it's very basic. Could you make it a little bit more modern, put some gradients on it, maybe mobile responsive as well?
I've whipped up a prompt for a snazzy, modern landing page with gradients and mobile responsiveness. It'll be the epitome of style and functionality. Just what you wanted. Because, basic is so last year. What's next on your list?
There's a little bit of JSX issues. Could you see what this is and fix that?
I understand your suspicion of my abilities.
You're just bad at your job. No, okay. So no, we actually managed to fix it somehow. Okay, that's great. So let's put like a gradient background and maybe put in some examples of talks that are going to be done by Sam Julian, Nathan Lambert, and myself.
Got it. We've now got a vibrant gradient background and a snazzy section highlighting topics.
By the way, so one thing I've decided, I realized in just working with voice a lot is that you always need mute buttons because sometimes you just want to chat with people, and then we also have like a compel response button that sometimes works. So it didn't understand me super well, but you get the idea that you start working with it. Okay, last demo that I didn't. All this is like just bonus content. I haven't shown it yet. So I just really like the idea that you can start building one-off apps that with APIs that you have no idea about. I've never learned web canvas. I have no idea how to manipulate it, but this is for me the clearest example of like I have augmented abilities to do this stuff because I can actually just run this. So run it. So here I'm basically asking it to make a Microsoft Paint clone. It is supposed to run. Install Vite and run. Yeah, still a little bit bug. Oh God, just do the thing. Do the thing. Okay, finally it's doing the thing. Oh no. Okay, it's like running into a terminal a version issue. You know what? I'm just gonna paste the issue in and see what happens. Sorry, this is like definitely a live demo. I didn't. Hey, it's installing. It's running. Hey, okay. Awesome. Does this work?
Hi, let's begin.
Okay, so I have this Microsoft Paint clone, but the pencil tool doesn't work. I need to be able to draw on a canvas.
All right, I've got the wheels turning on building a paint clone for you. You'll be drawing masterpieces in no time. As long as you don't draw any conclusions about my trust levels. Let's get that pencil tool ready to go.
Okay, so you updated really nicely, but I still can't draw on the canvas. Can you look at the code harder?
Sure thing. Let's dive into that code and see what's up. However, since I don't have direct access to the code you have, you'll need to share the relevant parts with me.
Just generate a prompt for it.
I've put in a request to iron.
Oh, sorry. I moved back. I'm sorry. Here, I interrupted it. Hey, we can draw it. Okay, so then the last thing I wanted to show you was another feature, right? So hey, so I really love to make memes. So I wanted to take this Microsoft Paint clone and be able to paste in images, right? So I want to take a screenshot of something, let's say like Dune meme, and then just paste it into the canvas. So you have to be able to copy from clipboard. I don't know what API you need to do to make that happen, but let's just say we take a Dune meme and paste it in here, and I want you to be able to do it. So right now I can't, but can you write a prompt for me to do that?
All right, I've set up a prompt to create a Microsoft Paint clone that will allow you to paste images directly from your clipboard onto the canvas. Looks like we're one step closer to meme-making glory. Just don't go pasting anything too wild, all right?
You can obviously prompt it to be sassy, but yeah, you can do all this stuff. I've tested everything from resizing, basically like make a full Canva clone, whatever meme maker you want. It just works. So I figured like this was one of the examples of like incorporating a new capability that has been made available to you, being able to have an agent control another agent, and just have a more magical experience. My demo is still not very polished, I'm sorry, but hopefully it gives you an idea. That's it.
I love the part where you tell it to do the thing or think harder, and it does. We have time for some questions. I've got lots of questions, so we'll go one and then number two. I'll bring you the mic.
Thank you. I just wanted to know what your opinion on Langsmith and LangGraph and that. Yeah, what's your opinion on that suite of tools?
That suite of tools. LangChain is, the one, like I would say one of the biggest AI engineering community in the world. Langsmith has very, very high market penetration for LangChain, and then struggles a little bit more outside of LangChain. And I initially was very skeptical about this until I got harder data from like other people that did not work for LangChain that this was the case. So I would say like the sort of more agnostic people are winning right now, whereas LangChain or Langsmith has kind of focused in on LangChain a little bit. And then meanwhile, they're really sort of starting their second framework arc with LangGraph, and they're really pushing that very hard. So I think whatever LangGraph becomes with LangGraph Studio and whatever that is, becomes sort of the next generation. So if you think about LangChain as wrapping individual API calls, LangGraph would be the sort of agent framework that they came up with. Is there a more specific reason?
Yeah, I mean, I saw you mention it and say that, Langsmith, they're like the first people to have those three core aspects that you were talking about.
Oh yeah.
But they were not the top of any of the tools that you use.
Yeah.
So I was just curious to know.
They are. They're. We teach them for the course that I run. I mean, like you don't have to use them. Like it's just a nice to have because they have a whole bunch of community like connectors to a bunch of things that you might want. So if you're doing RAG for like Slack, like you could write it yourself, or you could just grab one off the shelf from an open source tool.
Is it true, or have you found that it's difficult to deploy LangChain? Because that's the feedback I've heard. Is that?
Oh, I mean, it's just Python. Yeah, no, I don't think that's real. It's not really about the deploy that people have trouble with. It's more about the levels of abstractions. That it's like a prompt is like 5 Python classes down, and you're not close enough to the prompt to be able to tweak it. And I think that is the pros and cons of any framework. Like it's not a LangChain specific issue. Is that you use the framework, you go faster for the default paths, and then once you go wander off the beaten path, you run into more issues and you end up fighting the framework. And that's why a lot of people find that they start with LangChain, they go very fast, and then they're like, oh, like this doesn't let me do the thing I want to do, and then they rip it out, and they feel very glorified in doing that because they're like, well, I'm better than LangChain. No, like like. Oftentimes, you actually like LangChain has customizations that you just didn't bother to learn because you felt like ripping it out. You just rip it out, like, and it's totally fine. Like that's just how software engineering is.
Okay, let's hold this time. All right, next question.
All right. Great talk. I have a question around your interpretation of memory.
Yeah.
And the reason why I ask that is because in frameworks, you put in origin in NeurIPS.
Yeah.
But you put in LangGraph in memory. So what I want to understand is, what's your interpretation of memory? Because LangGraph, I understand it's a state machine, so memory is tied to an execution thread. Is that memory, or are you talking about long-term memory? What do you mean by memory in general?
So okay, all right. There's 2 questions here: LangGraph's take on memory, and what I mean by memory. So what I mean by memory is literally long-running conversations, individual state with you. Yeah, one thread with you, or the entity that is you. I can have multiple threads with you. But it's like as long as like my concept or embedding of what you are, what you want, what you're interested in, what we've done before, that is my memory. And then knowledge is like kind of general world knowledge of like where are we and like what date is it today? Like that's not memory, right? So like I can see these are basically like sort of different axes, and I think that's totally fine. I can see your reaction to LangGraph being in this field, and LangGraph, that's just because they have a memory module and they're significant enough that I have to include them because they have a take on memory. They used to have this service that they prototyped called LangMem, but they've kind of rolled that into LangGraph. So they just want to call everything LangGraph, and so I have to use their name for it. But I think they would have Lillian in her write-up on agents. Where is it? She had a really good breakdown of memory here. Types of memory. So there's like, sensory memory, short-term memory, long-term memory, and I think there's always like you have this like short-term, like super short-term, shorter term, and then super long-term. And there's maybe different levels of memory and different types of relationships between them and processing stages sometimes. Like I think MemGPT has a kind of like a garbage collection or sleep. A lot of memory implementations have this idea of garbage collection or sleep, that they sort of compress short-term memory into long-term memory. So you'll find all this similar ideas in all memory implementations because we're all trying to figure this out together and basically deal with the concept of context windows and very, very long, a lot of data when generated over time.
Awesome, thanks. Next question.
Really nice talk. I was just wondering, do you have any strong opinions about any of the agentic framework? Like Pydantic AI just came out.
Yeah. Tough. I have had a look at Pydantic AI. It just feels like Pydantic just wants to pretend LangChain doesn't exist, and that's fine, But like, I don't know there's a winner here. I think this is one of those things where like you will have your flavor of the thing that you like, and then someone else will have the flavor of the thing that I like. The thing that I argue against the most is let me just show you the docs, right? I have one cause that I want to advocate, and then everything else, people can do whatever they want. But we need to stop doing this. We need to stop doing this, right? So Pydantic is like, okay, like we'll make it easy for you to like switch between models, and then LangChain has their version, which they started out with, and like we'll make it easy for you to change models. So like the basically like the idea of the model switcher or the model router in your code, I think is unsustainable / bad, and you should just outsource it to a model router. This is why I have it specifically in here that you should just have a gateway or model router who specializes in that. And having this live in your code is tech debt. Everyone is every framework has their version of this, and they are all slightly different. And this is like a lot of engineering effort to that there's just going into adaptability layers that just like doesn't matter. Like we should just everything should just be centralized by a router layer, and like not have this live in your code, because like this is like undifferentiated heavy lifting. We're like writing so much code for this. Like even like if you look at AutoGen, if you look at Crea, like they also like Crea doesn't have so much of this, but they all have various versions of this, and it just doesn't make sense. Like you don't just need model routing, you also need to track your ops. You also need to insert your context in there. And so basically these are all versions of the same tool that exist as a layer outside of the agents. And I wish that people would start combining these things, because what this means is that every time you switch frameworks, you have to switch this entire stack as well. And it'll be nice to not do that.
Awesome, thanks. One more question. Oh, down there.
Hey, Swyx, great talk. Quick question. What do you think about prompt optimization tooling or just flow engineering in general? Do you think that everything is going to collapse to be an end-to-end, like when you prompted it to do the thing and it did it? Or do you think flow engineering and being more granular with more systems engineers is going to matter in the future?
Yeah, so for those who are not familiar, flow engineering is this concept that was coined by Codium, now Kodo. We had the creator of flow engineering on a podcast about 2 episodes ago. And the other thing is that the other image that people should have in their head is basically the difference between training a bunch of things like this, right? So if you were to do real-time voice, you used to have to do ASR, LLM, TTS. Then you just get the big model guys to come in and just do one endpoint, and that's the difference, right? This is kind of the evolution. I would say that engineers love this stuff, love training together small little models and feeling smart, and then the ML people come in and just like, yeah, we just 10x the amount of money and parameter size and all that, and train a better model. I would say there's like different strokes, different folks. If you care about costs, then typically you just you chain together the flows and try to have more controllability. Whereas if you care about AGI, you tend to throw everything into a big model. I think like I don't think you have to choose. I think like you can reasonably be pro both, but you can understand that only one of them will lead to AGI, and the others will just lead to products that make money, and that's fine.
Different strokes for different folks.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
But yeah, flow engineering, for those who don't know, very impressive. They actually recently updated on 01. So here are the results. Basically, flow engineering is a layer on. It's like a reasoning layer on top of every base model. So like for what is this benchmark? This is the I think it's like Amy or one of the math and coding benchmarks. AlphaCode, sorry, it's AlphaCode. They run it based on the base model, and then they run the flow engineering layer on top of each of these things. And it's just a straight boost because it's basically a reasoning or chain of thought layer. People are trying to bake this in more now with, O1, R1, F1, QWQ, whatever these things are. And I think there's more unsolved questions there about like what the best approach is. But it makes sense that like being able to spend more inference in a smart way is going to improve your performance. But like this may still not be as fruitful a direction long term as just train a bigger, better model with a different architecture. So it's really weird. Like at the start of the year, I actually tried to stack rank the research directions, and I put this at the top. But I may not put this anymore today because we've explored this enough that like I'm not sure like there's that much left to go. I'll try. If you want to, do we have another question or are we done?
That was the last question, but you can keep going.
Oh, I was just gonna give references. I always like to like reference. There's a whole bunch of work that we do here that tries to introduce this. Here we go. Directions, I think. Yeah, here. So in January, we marked out the research directions that we thought were high profile for the year, and we stack ranked them. So it's long inference, now called reasoning, synthetic data, alternative architectures, mixture of experts, and non-linear LLMs. We put flow engineering as number one here. But I think like now that we have seen these come out, like I don't think they are like game changing for like 2025. So if when I do this next month, I'm gonna have to think a lot harder for where flow engineering is gonna go.
We actually have one last late coming question from Peter.
Let's just follow up here. Where do you think the intersection is here between like models get better at reasoning and techniques that get overly on top? It's like there's always going to be something that you can do to boost it a little bit further if you're willing to spend the compute time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just curious about what your thoughts there, where that intersection might lie.
What is your job?
What am I trying to do?
Yeah.
Build. My product is a dev tool, but I'm trying to figure out like where the cost optimization is in waiting for like a smarter model versus spending a ton of time on building out techniques. Like Sam Altman had that famous thing. He's like, don't try to push the boundaries too much against where the models, frontier models, are capable of in like 6 months from now, something like that. So I find that a lot of the investment in techniques like chain of thought reasoning, that's not a really good example, but some of the agentic workflows that are expensive in compute, take a lot of time to develop well, might get surpassed very quickly just by base model capability. So the question is like, where do you think that's headed?
Not to come back to this flow eng thing here, like it's really nice that this flow engineering method was developed pre-O1, and when O1 came out, they just reapplied it on O1, and they added these two charts, and so it's still additive. So it's almost like the AI engineering layer is valuable regardless, or it's finding that persistent value regardless of the model layer, and the model layer can advance, and AI engineering will not be eaten up there, at least for now. I think there is a strong chance that in the full course of history or time that it will be. But right now, AI engineering can significantly add performance for here. I think the one place I'll flag that it's at risk is actually real-time voice. Like right now it is like OpenAI's real-time voice is not as good as the state-of-the-art like chained stuff from the people who have been doing this for like 10-20 years, but it's getting there. Like, just give it a year. And then obviously tomorrow with vision, like it'll just blow everyone away with the AGI-ness of combining vision and voice together. For those who don't know, that we're expecting vision to be launched tomorrow. Cool.
Awesome. That was amazing. Everyone please give a round of applause for swyx.
Thanks.